What's up, everybody? Mike Davis here. Sound Off Sports. Great show for you today. We're going to be talking about Dak Prescott. Franchise quarterback is out for the Cowboys. Can they survive without Dak? We get your thoughts. Plus, Dennis Allen is now the former head coach of the New Orleans Saints. What do you think about that? And we're going to get your thoughts and see if it was the right move. Plus, we got a Beatbox master coming into the studio. You don't want to miss it. SOS starts right now.
Make some noise. This is Sound Off Sports, sponsored by Sam and Ash.
Hello there and welcome. I'm Mike Davis. Thanks so much for joining us here on Sound Off Sports. I'm joined right now by my producer, James Edward Barrickman the fourth. James, great to see you.
Glad to be here.
Entering week 10 of the NFL, a lot of
flying
stuff.
By. It sucks.
Flying by, but so many storylines, of course. There's the start of some coaches being fired. We're going to be touching on that. We got a lot of injuries to deal with, of course. A lot of 2-7 teams. There's nine
Yep.
2-7 teams. So I guess you can say there is a
Tankathon is on.
Is it Tankathon?
There's a
Tankathon
website
for who?
called Tankathon. Tank for Shador.
That's your guy.
Yeah, Tank for Shador. And we'll talk about that, last block of the show?
Block, yeah. We're going to be getting into that. But let's first kick this off with America's team, okay? America's team, the Cowboys. Dak Prescott, their franchise quarterback, is out multiple weeks. Craziness ensued in that last game, a laceration on his hand. Now he's dealing with another issue with an injury to his hamstring potentially. So a lot going on. We asked you all at home, can Dak and the Cowboys survive without Dak? In fact. So let's see what people at home are saying. Let's get a response right off the bat, James.
This first one is from Bear Cornelius on Facebook.
Great
He says,
name.
Dak stinks. Should have been dumped years ago. All caps, Mike. All caps.
Wow. Bear Cornelius, amazing name.
Not a Dak fan.
I want to steal that name from you, Bear. So
Why does
congratulations.
that remind me of Christmas?
It's a lovely name.
Yeah.
Cornelius, Christmas.
Cornelius, there's
Christmas.
a Christmas movie with a Cornelius, I swear. Yeah.
Bear Grylls. It's a great name.
Right.
But listen, congratulations just on the name. But yeah, I mean, listen, a lot of people think Dak stinks. He got that huge contract, right? The largest contract ever given to a quarterback. So the Cowboys are kind of tied to this guy. But everything that's going down in Dallas, Arlington right now is not a pretty sight. They're not surviving with Dak. So why would they survive without Dak is the way that I would look at it. I mean, yes, it could be the most Cowboys thing ever for Cooper Rush to come in and for the team to suddenly start moving in the right direction. But if you were diagnosing the problem in Dallas, what's your diagnosis?
The things that the Cowboys used to be good at, they're no longer good at. They can't run the football. They're 31st, I think, in rush yards per game. And the defense, which is really supposed to be the strength of this team, is the weakness. They're one of the worst defenses in the league. I have the stat here. 6th most yards allowed per game and 2nd most points per game allowed. What the heck happened? We came into this season thinking that this is supposed to be one of the better groups, in the league, and it just hasn't been that way at all.
Two things happened. One, Dan Quinn, who was running the defense, the defensive coordinator, left town. He's now the head coach of the Commanders. So that's number one.
Right.
Mike Zimmer came in, who knows defense, but it takes some time to adjust to a new system.
Yeah.
And number two, Micah Parsons, their best player,
He's been hurt off and on.
has been hurt.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are problematic in that scenario. The problem is, though, they can't run the ball. It doesn't seem like the offensive line is functioning
Dak's
like they used to.
one of the top 10 most sacked quarterbacks in the league.
Right.
They can't
So
protect Dak.
just-
They can't run the football.
So you can't do a lot of things right. And
Right.
I think a lot of people think, well, it's just about Dak getting the ball to CeeDee Lamb. But that's not how you really win games in the NFL. And then you start adding injury issues on top of it, and it becomes a very problematic situation.
It's, like when Dak is – the question here is, can the Cowboys survive without Dak? Well, they're 3-5 with Dak. So, and Dak was their only source of offense. So is Cooper Rush going to come in and somehow make the defense better, somehow going to make the protection better, somehow going to make them run the football better? No.
Yeah.
A loss here to Philly, a poorly coached Philly team, I might add. I think it might be time to think about the future if you're the Cowboys with a loss here this week.
Listen, you never know what happens in an interdivisional matchup in game. So, you never know what happens there. But yes, Philly should beat them, and they should beat them handily. Let's get another response. Hear what else people are saying when it comes to, can the Cowboys survive without Dak Prescott?
This next one is Kenneth Smith on Facebook. He says, same thing we're saying, honestly. He said they can't survive with him playing.
Wow. I wonder if that's Ken Smith here from Fox 5. It might be different.
Ken Smith burner?
It could be Kenneth. It wouldn't be too much of a burner if he just added the Nth. But listen, I think the part of the equation we have to talk about here on SOS now is, of course, the Jerry Jones component to this.
Yeah.
When it comes to Jerry Jones, this is a guy who does know football, actually. He played college football. He's a self-made billionaire. So I have a lot of respect.
Can we say he knew football?
Yeah.
Can we say that?
That's a good way. That's why I love you. That's why James is he's a great co-host for me, because that's true, James. You're on point. I just wanted to preface that I have a lot of respect. He's a self-made billionaire. He really, they had those Jimmy Johnson years, but a lot has changed since the Emmitt Smith, the Troy Aikman years, the Roger Staubach years.
30 years ago.
Cowboys. It's a lot different. So Jerry Jones is really running the team 100%. He's the GM. He's the owner. His son, Stephen Jones, works with him. What's your assessment on that? I mean, can the Cowboys find any type of success and get back to the promised land while Jerry Jones is alive?
No. I think you look around, Cowboys Nation, you ask any Cowboys fan, they're going to tell you it starts up top with Jerry Jones. And as great as he was for them and as iconic as Jerry Jones is, there comes a time when it's time to step down, kind of give up some of that power, some of that control you have, and give it up to some newer blood, some people who are with the times.
James, as we head to break, let's get one last response from the good people at home.
This is Robert Tate on Facebook. He says, we'll be better off without that loser.
Welcome back to Sound Off Sports. I'm joined right now by, you think this is just coming from the ether. Where is this music emanating from? It's emanating right there. R Beatbox.
What's going on, Mike?
I'm just gonna leave. I don't think we can do better. That's that. That was the best introduction I've ever been a part of. I
think that was a great intro, especially you saying, you know what, just do you when I count in. What? That's all right.
That's what people want to see. They just want to see JR Beatbox do him. The One Drop Foundation. This Saturday, Springs Preserve, we're going to be talking about the Walk for Water 2024. A lot of great stuff going down, but I want to talk about you before all that, because listen, we got to talk water, climate crisis, all that kind of good stuff in our community. For me as an East Coaster, you're an East Coaster like me too.
Yes.
Whenever I got to say water, I grew up saying water. How do you say water or water?
Water. Fun fact,
Yeah.
Since I started beatboxing, my voice changes all the time. So sometimes the native Bronx comes out of me, and then because I do so many high frequencies with my vocal cords, when I say certain words,
Yeah.
it allows me to sound different. So water. Is this all?
Because I don't hear the Bronx in your voice at all.
I think when the attitude comes out, and I rarely get mad. I'm a very peaceful person. So
I
I'm
can appreciate that. I'll tell you a story about me. When I first, I'm getting old. I've been on TV for a little bit now. When I started my career, I was so green, dude. I was saying, I had a segment at my last station called the water cooler question of the day. And I used to say, it was in Texas. And I was like, they call me a Yankee every day because I would just say water instead of water,
Yeah, my mother is straightening it. Like, she's like, water. She's like, water. And she says soda.
Soda. That's my mom says that too.
Yeah.
Pizza.
Yeah.
Everything with an A has the R at the end. See, we have a lot in common and with the moms, and then after that, it stops.
It does.
Yeah, there's not much after that. But one thing I would love to be able to do, because I want to know the story of how you found this gift. All right, to listen to my full conversation with R Beatbox, make sure you go to our YouTube page, Silver State Sports and Entertainment. Welcome back to Sound Off Sports. All right, so we have another topic to discuss right now. Head coach Dennis Allen of the Saints has been fired. He's also a guy who was fired by the Raiders. Yes, he's the first coach to be fired by two different teams starting the same quarterback. And yes, that was Derek Carr. So, James, let's talk about Dennis Allen being fired as the head coach of the Saints. What was your initial reaction to this news?
I hate to talk this way about a man who lost his job because, we're talking about real people here, but he wasn't working. And if you're a Saints fan, it's almost like good riddance. What's his record in New Orleans? 18-25. I'm not quite sure why they hired him in the first place. Defensive coach. He worked under Sean Payton there for a while, but his record in Oakland was 8-28.
Yeah.
So, I understand that people can make strides throughout their career and maybe work their way back up to a head coaching position, but I didn't like the hire from day one. It didn't work out, and now they're on a 7-game skid and just lost their head coach. So,
well, here's how it happens. Okay, so first of all, a guy like this, you get two chances, really, to be a head coach in the NFL. Now that you failed at two, you're done. Here's the thing, though, about Dennis Allen. He's a great defensive coordinator. So a lot of guys, and it's okay to be honest, a lot of guys are great coordinators and not good head coaches. And that's okay. Not everybody's meant to be a head coach in the NFL. Dennis Allen is an elite defensive coordinator, and he will undoubtedly get another defensive coordinator job because he's good at it. He's just not a good head coach. And I think a lot of times when you're asking the question, well, Sean Payton, an elite coach, an elite head coach who transforms organizations in record time, look what he's doing with Denver, Super Bowl champ, they are afraid of change. They're like, okay, well, we have a good culture here. We feel like Sean Payton developed a good culture. Let's just snag the guy who's already in the room, who's part of the Sean Payton tree, and just get him in the mix rather than having somebody come in who has to build a brand new culture. It's kind of like people who are thinking, owners and executives thinking, listen, we want to speed up this process. We don't want to bring in a new guy who's got to start up a brand new culture. But the thing is, there is no fast track for success. You can't just assume that Dennis Allen's going to be able to translate and become the head coach that you're hoping him to be. You really need to do it the hard way. You got to start from the ground up, right?
You can't just because he worked under Peyton and just because he worked on, I'll use Belichick as another one.
100%.
Like, just because he comes from the Peyton tree or just because he comes from the Belichick tree doesn't mean he's going to be the right guy. So sometimes it's okay to go outside of the organization to go get your next head coach. And I thought that's what they should have done. They did not, but now look where they're at.
100%. We saw those issues from the Belichick tree early on, with the guys like the Romeo Crennels and the Charlie Weiss guys. They didn't really find any success.
Matt Patricia, Josh
didn't
McDaniels,
work.
Didn't work.
Vrabel's really the only one.
Vrabel and what's the DC's name?
Brian Flores.
Brian Flores.
Yeah, he was a pretty good head coach with Miami as well. But there are certain trees that work. The Andy Reid tree kind of has
Sean McVay, Kyle
tree.
Shanahan.
But the thing is, a lot of times those guys have to go somewhere else. Right. And they have to develop, they're bringing a culture that they develop somewhere and implementing it to a new place.
Right.
So for them to just say, hey, let's look into the room next door and give Dennis Allen a chance, I guess that's a considerate thing, but you can't assume that it's going to be a pleasant, different surprise and just think that, this is going to be the same thing we had with Sean Payton. Now, let's just be fair. Devil's advocate, James, let me ask you this. Because we wanted to highlight to our viewers and everybody at home, listen, he's the first coach to be fired from two different jobs, two different teams with the same quarterback.
And I don't think that's fair.
Well, let's talk about that because I want you to get your take on that, and I want to know, in posing the question to you, how much of this is Derek Carr's fault?
Listen, Derek Carr has not played well this year. And what is striking is how well the Saints offense looked the first 2 games of the season where they put up 47 and 44 points. Since then, they're on a 7-game skid where they're averaging 16 points a game.
We'll see what unfolds now in New Orleans with a brand new interim head coach. But we're going to be right back after a short break. Coming up next, we have Sink or Swim.
You wanted to make everybody happy. He wants to make everybody happy. He's having these kumbayas. I'm taking a week off so we can find ourselves. They need to be out there practicing, not, doing Zen or yoga or whatever the hell they're doing. They need to be mean like the old Raiders were. That's why I'm not a fan anymore. But the old Raiders, bring them back. And the son, he needs to be like the daddy. He didn't take no crap from nobody. But you keep that Antonio Pierce on there, and that's all he's going to do is keep doing the kumbaya moments, patting people on the back, giving them participation trophies, showing up in his low rider. I mean, who cares what he drives? He needs to drive a team to the championship.
All right, that is one of the most classic rant calls we have gotten here on Sound Off Sports. Thank you so much to Ruben Gutierrez. Listen, Ruben said a lot of great stuff in there.
Well, his call was longer. It was too long for our purposes here, so we had to cut him down a little bit. But it was a great call. Thank you for calling.
In terms of the stuff that he mentioned, I do like a lot of it. Listen, listening to Ruben and his thoughts, my biggest thing that I'm reflecting upon is something that Michael Lombardi always talks about on his shows, which is practice. And you can tell which teams in the NFL are getting better because those are the teams that are practicing. I know a lot of teams are worried about, getting hurt, maybe being, riding their players too tough, certain coaches, but it's, according to Michael, the teams that are improving upon the season are the teams that are practicing. The teams that are getting worse or staying stagnant are not practicing. So practice is a big driving force. But yes, I do think it's fascinating because, as Ruben was mentioning, a lot of the Antonio Pierce promise, and I think a lot of the excitement that was surrounding this team, people, it was garnering a lot of excitement, this move, and making him the interim to head coach officially, because guys like Max Crosby, guys like Devontae Adams, they were going to bat for him. Yeah, they wanted him to get that job. And I think a lot of people thought he was going to bring a swagger to the Raiders. And I think if we're talking from an intangible standpoint, that was one of those things. We kind of knew his head coach experience wasn't plentiful. He didn't really have such a great record even when he was a head coach in high school. So it was more so like, we're thinking this is going to be a player's coach who's bringing a culture, bringing a vibe, bringing a swagger to an organization. And unfortunately, we've been devoid of swagger. So, James, how can a guy who's really bringing that to the table, we're not thinking about X's and O's, we're not thinking about play calling, we're thinking about swagger. How can the guy who was promised to bring that type of swagger, how can we be so devoid of any swagger?
I think because when that's all you're promising is swagger and effort, because that's really what this was all about, was when they fired Josh McDaniels, how hard the guys played for him down the stretch there, and I think they were like 5-4 or something around that. It was, these guys are going to play hard for you.
But let me jump in. Here's my question. Now, seeing the evidence of that, maybe they weren't playing hard for Coach Antonio Pierce. Maybe they were playing hard in response, in a revenge type of mentality against Josh McDaniels. And there's a difference there.
No, I think when any coach gets fired throughout the history of the NFL, there's a new juice that kind of hits whatever team just lost their coach. I think that's what happened here.
But you can conflate playing hard for Pierce rather when instead they're playing hard in spite of Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, and I think maybe that was part of it. But I think what you're trying to say here is there's a difference between playing hard for Antonio Pierce and just that new juice, that coach just got fired, new juice sort of deal here. And I think the problem with Antonio Pierce is that he was not qualified. Let's just call it what it is. He wasn't qualified to be named the head coach. I think a lot of times when you're hiring a coach, you have to look at the guys that the players wanted. And, Max Crosby really went to bat, as you mentioned. And I think the fan base saw how that season ended and also was kind of like, Antonio Pierce is our guy.
Let me ask you this. Is a successful franchise operating based upon the notions of the crowd and the fans and the players, or are they just going about it in terms of
I'm not saying I agree with what happened. I'm just telling you that's what in my eyes what happened.
That's what happened. And the question is, does that breed success? And probably not.
Absolutely not. No.
As an owner, you need to take a stand and you have to do a true hiring process, and you have to think about who is somebody who is going to develop culture. It doesn't happen overnight. Who's somebody who players might not love because he's working them hard, but they respect him and they trust that this person knows more football than I do, And I think that's a hard thing to do because, frankly, there just doesn't seem like there's a lot of coaches in today's NFL that breed that confidence where another player who's been playing for a lot of years wouldn't know more than that guy or what, So to me, that's a big issue because although Devontae and Max Crosby go to bat for a guy like that, do they really know what's best for them in terms of the coach that they need? Because once the proof isn't in the pudding, once you're not winning, then kind of everybody's like, well,
what the heck?
What the heck? We sometimes lose the plot here on SOS, but that's what makes it fun. James, as we end the show, I want to say thank you for tuning in. It's lovely having great callers like Ruben Gutierrez, so shout out to Ruben. But James, as we finish today's show, let's end on a response that we haven't gotten to. We'll see everybody next week. James, let's hear this final response.
Jeff Williams on Facebook, he says, Raiders coach needs to go and the owner.